Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Hot Trends in Global Employment webinar. We're so happy that you were able to join us today. So we will be hearing from Catherine Boschkoff. Catherine Boschkoff joined Hult as an adjunct professor in innovation consulting in our San Francisco campus, and for over 4 years has worked to expand the resources and services Hult provides to our students, alumni, and employers as the Global Vice President of Career Advancement and Alumni Relations. She has her finger on the pulse of the employment scene and has consulted countless students to ensure that they have the knowledge and opportunities to gain employment in their desired field and market. Thank you so much, Catherine, for joining us. Take it away.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk to our candidates before you arrive so that I can inspire you with some of the great trends that are going on in the market today. In brief, what I would say is 2018 has been a great year so far. As all of you know, globally, many economies are in growth. The US economy is in high growth. We saw an increase in employment for our MBAs last year, and there's lots of exciting change underway in terms of how work is done. And that's really what I'd like to spend my time on today, is to highlight a few trends that you might want to take advantage of, and then to talk about how some of our graduates have thrived by considering these trends and baking them into their career plans. So there's 5 I'll talk about: the technology revolution, big data, global demand, the gig economy, and the rise of diversity as a practice in businesses. Technology, the technology revolution, as everyone should know by now, is driving a massive transformation in work and in the need for new skills. The Internet of Things, and what we are now calling the 4th industrial revolution, is transforming business. Regardless of if you are in the home, in car, in air travel, any part of the business that you want to participate in today is either driven by data or uses data. And as we get more data and more automation, the way we work is really starting to change. So what the experts tell us is that children who are in grade school this year, 65% of them are going to do something in a career that doesn't exist today. We hear from our employees, we hear from our employers that employees, that is you guys, are in need to continue to differentiate yourself through activities that robots can't do. So that's things that are hard to automate or codify. Things that you have always been great at, we need to continue to do more, which is creativity, teamwork, problem solving. All these things are critical to finding rewarding employment and living in a world where we have automation, we have AI, we have robots all working in collaboration around products and services. So we don't really know how digital technology is going to impact employment, but what we do know is that change is inevitable. And reskilling, that is skilling up the first time and then reskilling, continually learning, needs to be at the heart of any of your strategies. And already we hear our CEOs, when we talk to them, they have skill shortages. But it's a little bit more than just a shortage. Many of our employers tell us that people in jobs today are going to have to change. And whether you have a skill today or whether you're developing it, you're going to need to continue to work on that evolution of your skills portfolio. I spend a lot of time talking to our employers on what they like about Hult grads, where we excel, where we have skills, perhaps where we need to add to the curriculum to enhance our curriculum so that we're filling all the skill gaps and really anticipating employer needs as these skills arise. This is some of the data that we're using right now internally to help drive our curriculum. And I spent a lot of time talking to our faculty about what's hot out there. So I want to share what's hot with you. Of course, cybersecurity is really hot right now, and this was before all of the election things that happened in the United States. It's been hot in corporate America for a couple of years. So if you happen to be in cybersecurity, you have infinite employment opportunities. There's just not enough capacity and competency to handle those problems. More in the purview of a business school is skill shortage in data science and analytics, and hence our new degree in business analytics. But if you look to the right, all of these things are skills that an MBA, MIB, or one of our dual degrees is targeted at improving. So even though you think that the world would have great talent in critical thinking, design thinking, innovation, because these are things we know how to do, we really are seeing a skills gap right now. And employers cannot find enough talent. Please notice over there on the right, a global perspective is essential to employee success today. So when I look at all these things and I think about who is taking advantage of these skills, what does this look like? There are many, many famous people from Hult now, alumni, and you can read about these people on the website, CEOs and people that are further along in their career. But I wanted to take a step back and say, what does this look like when you're first starting out? How do you take advantage of an industry where there are skill gaps? How do you skill yourself up? How do you build that career path? And I offer to you today Jamal Blackwell, who was actually one of my advisees in Dubai. Jamal is, when he came to us, was a very humble, kind of not a worldly person from Pittsburgh in the United States. Jamal wanted to expand his horizons, so he went to Dubai and said, I'm going to spend all my time in Dubai. Previous to that, Jamal was actually a night auditor at Hilton. That means that he did the night shift and he put data in as it came in. So again, quite a humble job. So Jamal goes to Dubai, is engaged in the MIB program, and really works on building his collaboration skills, his critical thinking and problem skills, problem solving. He spent some time looking at design thinking. He's a very innovative person. He worked on his creativity. He worked on all those core skills that I just mentioned, and he knew that they would have market appeal. He didn't really know where it was going to end up, and indeed, he ended up going back to the United States. He was passively searched. That means he wasn't really looking for a job, and Booz Allen contacted him when he was in Dubai and recruited him to come back to the United States and work in their practice in Washington, D.C., working on audit for the Navy. So the story for Jamal could have ended there very happily. Being a consultant at Booz Allen is a fabulous accomplishment. But Jamal continued to learn. So he took on the topics of data science, advanced Excel. He learned SQL. He taught himself lots of technical skills that differentiated him within the Booz Allen practice. And within a very short time, because I believe he still is under 25, he was promoted to up through the ranks. He's now a senior consultant. He's been transferred to San Diego, California, where he's running the audit, again, for the Navy at one of the largest naval bases in the United States. So I like his story and his career path because he really kind of did a heads up, looked around at the world, took responsibility, and skilled himself up in things that are important to employers. And then he kept at it. So he keeps on learning. I'm confident that however the world changes, that Jamal is going to take advantage of it and is going to be on top of the skills he needs for the next phase of his career. So the next trend I want to talk to you about is data. And I want to talk about big data. So as I mentioned, IoT created a world, Internet of Things created a world where we either use data or we make data. So there is an awful lot of data out there in the world, and every economy has unmet needs for skills in data analytics. So why would that be? And besides the fact that there's a ton of data out there, we now know that outperforming companies are capitalizing on big data. So the leaders are more likely to make decisions based on data, quite a bit more likely. They're more likely to have formal career paths for people in analytics, 2 times the chance. They're going to use the data for growth. So 75% of leaders cite growth as the key source of value from analytics. They're going to measure the impact of analytic investments. They're going to use predictive analytics, as you can see on the bottom, and they're going to have some notion of how to share the resources in this area. But it's bigger than just kind of what companies want to do. This is the market view of big data. It's an eye chart. It's also an opportunity chart. So any one of those boxes is a box that doesn't have enough people. So you can, if you like data, or even if you just like business and data, you can find a place for yourself in this world of data, analytics, and business. If you look in the middle of the chart, the red area, there's platforms, data analyst platforms. You can be a data scientist. If you look below that, BI platforms, visualization. These are all jobs for people who like to draw pictures. You can do statistics. You can do data services. There are so many opportunities there. But it doesn't end there. Look to the right. All of that stuff in purple, where it says applications enterprise, that is the marriage of business knowledge and statistics and data analysis. So there's a whole category of jobs in sales where you look at data, you use data to run the business. There's a whole category of marketing and B2B where you're looking at websites, you're optimizing your websites, you're smart in how to do marketing, you can integrate between those two worlds. You could be marketing in B2C over to the right. You could be using data and customer service. So I mention this because it's really a big market. And if I was in my strategy point of view, I would say tremendous fragmentation. There's so much innovation going on. There's so much fragmentation. There's activity everywhere. That's a great market to be in because it means virtually anybody can find a place in it. So when you think about the world and you think about opportunities and you're thinking about what's hot and how do I take advantage of it, think about data analytics and what role you want to play in this revolution that's taking place. And you'll have a lot of choices because as of today, just in the United States, there's a couple 100,000 just data analytics jobs. So those are the red jobs in the previous chart. That's just the stuff in the middle. That's none of the stuff on the sides or the bottom. And by 2020, there's going to be close to 3 million job postings in the United States. So it's a really, really big business and it's going to get even bigger. So when I talk to my students, how can I participate in this market is often the question. These are the jobs that are hot right now. And business analyst is one where we often see Hult students taking on responsibility. In fact, it's the most common job title for our students who end up in consulting. So if you look at where our students end up at PwC or Accenture, they're taking a role as a business analyst. And that's someone who understands business, may have an MBA, may have an MIB, maybe one of our MIMs. They understand business, but they have an analytic frame and they can work with data. So that's a great job and one that we see very often. Market analyst would be another job in consulting where you're looking at trends, or you could be on the corporate side, again, looking out at the market and changes. Many of these other jobs, data science, predictive modeler, data modeler, statistical analysts, these are more of the quantitative, traditional data science jobs. And then at the bottom, analytic consultant, risk analyst. Again, people who marry analytics, are hardcore analysts, and can model real complexity. So they're not the data science, they're not working with the data, but they are really high-level analytics people. So these are all great choices for a Hult alum, and we have students in many of these jobs already. I wanted to take a brief moment here and talk about one of them, which is Ashirbad Ghosh, who your enrollment advisors may have mentioned to you already, because I do like to talk about Ashirbad. One of my most favorite things about Ashirbad is he comes back to our San Francisco campus and mentors students. He's very interested in giving back to the school. And that's because he's really achieved a lot in quite a short period of time. He did our MIB a couple years ago and went to YouTube His first position really hadn't had much work experience before he came to us. He achieved a six-figure job with a bonus with an H-1B sponsorship and was good at data. This is before we had our new degree in business analytics. Built himself a career in business analytics and then transferred from YouTube, went out and got himself another job at Facebook, where he's spending all of his time now looking at product quality. So again, an analytic job. He just made this change in the spring, and he had 2 weeks off between YouTube and Facebook. And he took that time and was mentoring residents on the San Francisco campus, talking to the current students about his job and what it takes to be an analyst and what his experience has been, and really sharing his wisdom. So there are many jobs in data analytics. I hope that you consider them as a possibility. And if you're successful, I also hope that perhaps you'll come back and be a mentor too to some of the students coming behind you. The next trend is global opportunities. So despite the news about the world shrinking and all of us thinking just about our countries, there's a whole other reality beyond what you might hear in the headlines. And actually, the market is very global, and the US is still a very popular destination market. When we think about the global world, what the business world knows, and you can see it on this slide, is that the business world is in the midst of this change. And in 2020 and beyond, the ability of organizations to manage their global talent, that is their most important asset, to manage it efficiently will mark the difference between success and failure. What that means is corporates know they need to be global, and they are global. They also know that millennials and the iGen want, expect, and will achieve jobs in overseas assignments. So headlines, I would say, put those aside and think about what the world is really like, and this is what it's like. So mobility has increased dramatically in the last decade, and it will do so again in the next couple of years, achieving 50% growth by 2020. Now, this chart shows ins and outs, and you can see that there is a lot of demand in emerging markets for global talent. There is also another view on it, which is there is a huge gap in the industrialized economies in terms of skills. So if it's red, look to the left, that's the United States and Canada. Red, big deficit. That is why the Canadian government most recently changed their immigration policy, because they don't have enough people to fuel their economic growth. The United States has 6 visas for skilled talent to come into the United States to drive economic growth. Down there in the bottom right is Australia, which has an open borders policy. For those under 30, you can walk in and get a visa and you can work right away. So they want and need you because there are not enough people there. There are a lot of sheep, but there are not enough people. So very open economy because of the deficit. If you look at that 1.4 over there, Japan, again, another economy that is high growth, needs skilled labor, has a negative birth rate, and needs to import talent. And they are also looking at changing their immigration rules. So when you look globally, which is what my job is, to look at where talent is needed, I still see a huge demand for talent in all sorts of big economies. And the US is a great place to build a career. So I will continue to recommend the US to our students. And in fact, we had, again, another banner year where 63% of our students in the United States who were looking for jobs last year got their job in the United States. That's almost exactly the same number as it was the year before. So prior year, 65%, last year, 63%, so virtually the same. Why is that? Because there's a lot of demand. Why is there demand? Because we know how to manage growth. We have an effective and safe capital structure. So everybody wants to invest in the United States. It's a big economy at 18 trillion and 25% of the global economy. There are 6 solid immigration visas, and diversity is valued. As I mentioned, there are other places to go if you're not interested in the US. So any economy that's high economic growth and low birth rate has changed their immigration policy or will figure out something to do in the next couple of years. So what this means is there's real benefit in thinking globally about your career. And I wanted to take a few minutes just to talk about a couple of our alums who've done this. This change in geography is a really big theme at Hult, and many of our students either do it or aspire to do it or will do it. So when you think about being global, think about how do I want to be global next year? And then think about how do I want to be global over the next 20 years? So this is Athena. She's a recent grad. Athena really wanted to move from Venezuela to the United States. She had a background as a mechanical engineer. She was working in automotive. Because she desired so strongly to move to the United States, she said, I'm not going to take any risks by changing everything. I'm not going to switch my career. I'm going to make sure that I make this geographic jump. And so I'm going to switch from doing automotive in Venezuela to doing automotive in the United States. And she now works at Tesla. She is also a great Hult alum because she comes back to recruit and she comes back to advise students on how to make that jump from here to there and how to get into a company like Tesla. And we now have a number of students or graduates working at Tesla globally. The next one I wanted to talk about is Daniel Gomez, who's become a friend of mine. Daniel's from Colombia, and he now sits on our Hult Alumni Committee, which is where Hult alums that are, say, 5 years out and want to come back and advise the school on alumni matters and market matters, volunteer for this committee, and he has a leadership position. Daniel's a kind of an interesting reverse story. Often our alums want to start companies. He had started a company in Colombia and wanted to make a switch into finance. So he came to Hult. He did the MPhil degree, and he got a job at a bank in finance and made that switch, career and geography, to the United States. He's sponsored with an H-1B. And after he made that first jump, he said, well, I like being global, I like being here, but I want to continue to grow. So he switched his career again, and he got out of finance, and he now is an analyst in a consumer company. Actually, Constellation Brands is one of the biggest liquor companies. So he thought about the global strategy. He did what he had to do to get into the United States to make that transition, and now he's moved on to continue to build his career in a new way. The last story I wanted to relay to you is Carl. Carl's an EMBA, was an EMBA. I personally coached Carl at Hult. Senior staff and senior consultants coach our MBAs looking to make a career change. Carl started working with me a year before he graduated. Carl is Dutch, and he was living in Shanghai doing our MBA program in Shanghai. He had been working in China for a good number of years. His family was there. He has children. He was working in energy, and he saw that the China growth trajectory was changing, and he wanted to make a move from China back to another country, but we didn't know which one it was going to be. So we spent some time talking about it, and we initiated a job search strategy for Carl where he could continue to build this global portfolio. And Carl and I talked about a United States strategy, a Europe strategy, a Middle East strategy, and we worked on all three at the same time. And frankly, I didn't know where Carl was going to end up. I knew he would end up in a great place. He was interviewing at Flextronics and the whole chip industry in the United States. He was looking at energy in Europe, and he has ended up in Dubai, working in business development for a consulting company. So he's expressed his global nature in a totally new and surprising way. And I'm confident that wherever Carl goes next, it will be somewhere global and somewhere interesting. And I mention this to you because so many students and alums are thinking about the first jump. But you also want to think about down the line, what does my life look like? And how do I continue to be global? And I think Carl's a great example of that. All right, the next one, the gig economy. This is something that's pretty popular and in the vernacular in the United States, and it's changing how we work. So what does this mean? Often if you're not working in this market, you don't know how much work is done on a project basis. So that's about a third. So the traditional employment model was we all went to work for IBM and we worked there for 30 years and then we retired. And then the model after that was we went and we worked for a company for 2 years to 5 years and we traded up and we switched around, but we were still working for a company. And then a bunch of us went in and started our own companies, which is what I did, and did startups. And now the thing is, you can work on a project. So there's a whole bunch of work that is corporate in nature, but is done on a project basis. So there are a lot of people out there working on 6, 12, 24-month projects. And it's done for a corporation, but it's a different kind of employment contract. At the same time, due to the internet and all this great technology, we work remotely. And then due to the world, we're looking at independent work. So people you may have a full-time job, again, working for IBM, and you might be working on the side too. It could be consulting through some expertise you have. It could be driving for Uber, who knows? But what I'm trying to say is that this gig economy, gig is to have one of these short-term jobs, is something that should be on your roadmap. And what does it look like? It could be scheduling is flexible. So you've got flexibility in what time you work, where you work. You could commute, you could work remotely, you can be freelance, you can be an employee, your hours are part-time, full-time, you can work on the side. All of these things are opportunities. And they really break the mold of the traditional 9-to-5 job. So as you're coming into business school, be open to these different ways of working because it could be for you. These are all the jobs that are in this category of flexible jobs. Some of them are projects, some of them are remote. If you are in any of these categories already or thinking about it, these are categories where you have an opportunity to perhaps do it in a different way. You could, of course, go get a 9-to-5 job, but you could also get a 6-month or 12-month contract. You could do 2 part-time contracts. There's lots of different choices now and lots of ways to accommodate different ways of working. And that's really where a whole new industry has sprouted up. What you see on the left, these are platforms where you can go register and you can find work. So they match supply and demand in different categories. So I've given you the top ones that we know about. I refer my students to these right away. Consider one of these platforms. There might be work for you. On the right-hand side are the personnel and staffing agencies that also connect people with projects. And in the past, many of my alums have kind of not so keen on them. They were like, I really want a full-time job at Facebook, or I really want to go right into LinkedIn. Well, my point is these guys on the right are a great channel into some of these big companies because the big companies cannot keep up with the talent demand. So they're spinning off tons and tons of project work to companies like Russell Tobin, as well as all of these guys on the left who basically source talent through, matching them on platforms. Here's an example of one of our students who took advantage of this different way of working. And Yang Li came to the United States. He's Chinese. He actually is quite a shy person, and he has quite a heavy accent. He worked really hard looking for a job. Working for a staffing agency, he ended up working for Robert Half, was not his first choice. But he came to see the wisdom in it because they did all the selling for him. So basically, they had a job for him at Google. He went to work for Google through Robert Half. They did all the introductions. They got him the assignment. And then that's when Yang Li's work began, because he had to impress Google. He did so. And Google then said, well, we want you full time. And they hired Yang Li full time at Google, sponsored him. He has an H-1B. He is now a staff person full time at Google, and has many years yet to work in the United States through his visa sponsorship. So he took an alternative path into a great company because he was open to the possibility of a staffing agency. And so I encourage you to consider that possibility, or to consider the possibility of working through one of these platform companies that I mentioned on the previous slide, because all of them have work. So like the take home of today is there's more work than people. And there's lots of different ways to participate in the economy. So be open, consider the possibilities. All right, diversity is the last trend that I wanted to bring up, especially for this crowd, because there's a real focus in the United States and in many other countries on diversity. That could be ethnic diversity, that could be the balance between men and women, that could be nationality, that could be cultural. So all of these different ways of working together have proven to CEOs that talent and diversity pay off. And so when we talk to our CEOs and we ask them about how much they value diversity, where are they putting it in their hiring strategy, you see, whatever country you're in, that there's a premium that's being placed on diversity. So why would that be? And the data has shown that companies with diversity end up outperforming others. We also know that organizations with a female executive lead are often more profitable, and that women are a big part of the labor force right now. So there are more women than men in colleges, and so a big part of supply. So take advantage of it. We also know that boards with diversity do better. And we know from all of our work in innovation that diversity fosters a more creative and innovative workforce. So I encourage my students to keep this in mind, because you actually, if you come from a different country, you speak a different language, you have a different culture, you have what employers want. And often students don't remember that. And just the power of being different has impact these days. So when I get a chance to talk to candidates, I always want to remind you of how valuable you are just with what you bring to business school in terms of your past experience. So Antonella is an example. So Antonella is one of our recent grads from last August. She has a U.S. job now. She's from Venezuela. She's a project engineer at Webcor. Webcor is the biggest construction company in the United States. Construction, need I say, is typically a male-dominated business. So in the past, I would say 20 years ago, it would be highly unusual that you would see a woman in any job, much less an engineering job in construction. And there we have one of our alums doing what she does as a project engineer in construction. So we're super proud of her. We're super proud of her for breaking down barriers and getting an awesome job at an awesome company. So in conclusion, as you think about all of these great ways to work and all of the things that are happening in the world, I wanted to just kind of net it out and to offer the possibility for you to think about different ways to create your career. So work is changing. There are plenty of opportunities for those who reskill or skill up. So think back to Jamal, who took responsibility for his career and skilled himself the first time to get the job at Booz, and then continued to grow. Or Shirbad, who's at Facebook, who built out a skill set in data analytics. The second one, creating work, jobs of the future that don't exist today. there will be many, many jobs that are created. In fact, Asherabad's job, which is in analytics, did not exist 5 years ago. And there are going to be lots of jobs to redefine how, where, and when you work. So Yang Lee's an example of starting in a project-based assignment that was initially not full-time, that started from part-time, grew into full-time, then grew into full-time, employed, and then employed and sponsored at Google. So break the mold, think differently, think creatively, think about all these different opportunities you have, and then make some choices as you come to Hult. Think about how you're going to leverage all these trends for your career. So I wanted to finish with somebody, one of my favorite students, who's continued to leverage everything that he can, and he stays very close to industry and what's going on. So Brian came to us a good couple of years ago. He was a biochemist. Brian's actually an American, so he's also an American. He was a biochemist. He came to Hult and he wanted to make a change. Not quite sure what kind of change, but he also was familiar with technology, and he started doing some consulting on the side when he was with us. He then became the president of the Hult Venture Club because he just got the bug to do a startup. And after he graduated, he started his own RFID company. So he saw a trend in the market, emerging, Internet of Things, the ability to track products with RFID. He started a company. And after he did that, he decided, well, I'm going to parlay those skills into a different kind of work. So remember, he's a biochemist. He wasn't a business person. He got his business skills at Hult. He then started a company and then says, well, I have more transformation in me. He took those RFID and consulting and computer skills and started consulting to a healthcare company. So now he's moved himself into healthcare, consulting, analytics. Again, he started in biochemistry. After that, he continued to think about developing his skills, and the whole career of data analytics started to open up, and he transitioned from consulting into a market analyst position at Google. And from there, within Google, he transitioned himself again to work on new technology that is emerging now. So he integrated his biochemistry, his RFID skills, his analytics skills, his consulting skills, and he's now a product marketing strategist at Google working on new technology. And I like that story because he's kind of the paradigm of Hult graduate, which is you come, you have a great experience, you learn lots of stuff, you reinvent yourself once, and then you continue to reinvent and grow and take advantage of opportunities in the world. And Google's a fabulous place to work, and he earned himself a position there. So he's my final kind of story that I get to brag about today, but he does kind of encapsulate all the good and hot trends that are out in the market. So with that, I'm going to thank you for coming today to listen to some of the trends in the market. And we do have a little bit of time. If there are questions, I'm happy to take any questions that might be coming up for you. And I'm always happy to share more wisdom from those who have come before you and are employed in the market today.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. So yes, if anyone has a question, then you can go ahead and type it in the Q&A box, and we will get Catherine to answer it for you. Yes, we did get a question about sharing the slides. So yeah, tomorrow we'll be sending out an email with the recording, so you'll have access to the webinar afterwards. All right, so we do have a question, Catherine. Someone is asking, what are some of the challenges you face when advising students?
The challenges. I think From an advisor perspective, I guess, I've worked with, me personally, I worked with thousands of students, and I've been I've advised CEOs before this. I would say a big personal challenge is helping the students discover what we on the outside can see. So it's easy for us often to see the solution to a job search, but it is really the student doing the work, the student discovering their skills and capabilities, the student having those aha moments, going out and meeting people, learning about new things. That's like, I would say a challenge is that we know it's all going to work out and we know the very many paths, but part of advising is we support the student to do the discovery. So it's the old, teach a man to fish. He's going to fish for life. So our job is to teach you guys how to reinvent yourselves and how to find those careers that are a perfect fit for you. So I would say the biggest challenge for me personally is I can't do it for you, even though I would love to. You guys will end up doing it. So that's my challenge. I would say if I was going to put myself in the student's role and said, what's the student's biggest challenge? I'll be honest, the whole program is intense. And so I know that our students have to balance that, the tension or the big job of doing the 1-year degree and looking for a job at the same time. So they will tell you there are not enough hours in the day. I would say that's their biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. And yet it happens. So that's the other thing our alums are going to tell you is it happens thousands of times a year. It's hard. It's hard to balance both, and people figure out how to do it, and they go out and they get great jobs.
Great. All right, we have another question. What other mini trends do you see within the most popular industries that Hult graduates join upon graduation? Consulting, tech, financial services, or an entrepreneurial path?
Consulting, tech, so in consulting, there's this huge, I mentioned it before, there's a big transformation going on in IoT. And so a lot of the work that used to be business process reengineering is now business design around all these new technologies that are emerging. So students are, when you're here or when you're making your choice about what you want to do, learn about as much technology as you can, because it really is driving so much innovation in the world. I think our alums do really well. That's why they're business analysts. They're helping figure out what these new things, these new paradigms are going to be. I would say in finance, you'd be very well advised to look into fintech. Blockchain, cryptocurrency are transformational technologies that are going to revolutionize not just fintech, but the way we use and encrypt information. So I would really encourage everyone to take a good hard look at that, because there's so many opportunities in that area. I would say on the entrepreneur side, we're in a cycle of really good funding. There's a lot of capital around for businesses, and I think it's a very healthy time for entrepreneurs. And that extends beyond, the United States where everything started. There are lots of good markets now, lots of micro markets, like London's a micro market, Estonia is a micro market, Berlin is a micro market. So it used to be entrepreneurship was just in Silicon Valley. And now wherever there's the confluence of a university, good capital sources, and people, you're going to have a micro market. So you can come from basically any part in the world, get yourself skilled up, and you can probably go back to somewhere in your region and find a micro market for startups.
Okay, great. So Yvette would like to know, how would you advise incoming students to balance the stress between networking and academics when both of those require high levels of attention to succeed?
Seriously, meditation. So it's hard. It's hard. So meditation or whatever helps you refresh is a practice you should develop before you get to Hult, because there's no easy answer to the fact that the curriculum is stimulating. There's so much to do. You're going to have a great time with your team. You're going to be innovating. And at the same time, you need to find the energy to get off campus and network. And what I always advise my students is whatever your personal health practice is that keeps you well balanced, make sure you tend to that. Outside of that, there's no easy answer for the fact that, you're signing up for a lot. It is a lot of stress, and you are going to learn resiliency if you don't already have it, and you're going to succeed. It's just, I know that because I've seen it lots of times, and you don't know it yet. So you're going to have a good outcome, but you need to take care of yourself during the process and make sure you have the personal, the physical, the emotional support systems to balance what is a challenging year, but could also be the best year of your life.
All right. Yeah, good advice. So Delma would like to know your advice for incoming students who are looking to hit the ground running and leveraging their past experiences and current schooling regarding their job search.
Oh, cool. Great question. I love that. That's like my Bible. So the fact that you're already thinking about who you were and how to leverage the person that you were puts you a step ahead of many people, because often students come in and they say, I don't want to do anything I ever did before, and I'm going to start over, and new country, new job, new industry, and students get kind of into this black or white. I don't want to do anything I did before. You're already giving yourself a head start because you're saying, I want to transform myself. I want to think about what I've done and how to leverage it. My advice would be go to the Fast Track program in the summer, because we offer webinars on how to think about who you were, how to think about the future, and how to represent that in a resume. And I would advise everybody on the call to get your resume done during Fast Track. Use the VMOC technology so you can build an even better resume, and come to school with your best first shot. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it definitely helps to come with something already developed. So good thinking, good question, good thinking. You're already ahead of the game, that you're trying to integrate what you did in the past with the person you want to be in the future. And really what you need to do is just do that thinking, that good hard work about what that's going to look like for you. And Fast Track is the way to do it.
Great. So Marty would like to know, is Hult an ongoing professional reinvention resource beyond graduation? For example, on the secondary and tertiary reskillings?
Oh, great question. Great. I love that question. That's one of the best things about Hult, is that it's the gift that keeps on giving. So first, we are always reinventing ourselves, and we try to stay very current with what's going on in the world so we can meet that need. And as you may have heard from your enrollment advisor, you do get a lifetime, every year you can take an elective during elective season, which is in the summer. So one free elective. We're also now offering to our alumni, we're doing residency programs in the summer. So like a mini summit, one weekend in the summer, where we're doing a skilling up session for you in something that's hot and current. So we want to think of ourselves as a resource for you, whether you're on campus or you're somewhere remote. Additionally, if you look at the alumni website through your enrollment advisor can get you onto that, you can see that there are global webinars at least once a month, but increasing frequency, where either someone at Hult or an alum in a position of prominence is coming back to offer a webinar on their passion project or what they do. So we're sharing we're trying to share the intelligence within the community. Longer term, will we do certificates? How will we do it? There's all sorts of things that we may do to offer other opportunities. As you know, you can through Ashridge, there's a whole executive education program where we bring corporations in for reskilling. So there may be something that arises in between the Ashridge experience and the degree experience, but nothing today that we're announcing. So I'd say watch that space. There's lots of good stuff in the future. And until then, take advantage of this fabulous opportunity to come back to campus and take that free elective and upskill in data analytics or scenario planning or strategy, some of these technologies. We actually have close to 400 alums are coming on campus this summer. And then we have close to 200 already signed up to come to weekend learning events. So definitely a big part of the community is engaging in that reskilling.
Great. That's fantastic. So I think that look to the future is a good note to end on. Thanks again, Catherine, for joining us. If you guys have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Our email will also be in that email that we're sending tomorrow with the recording of this webinar. And thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.